Many people notice the same pattern at the end of certain workdays. The work wasn't physically demanding. It wasn't even especially complex. And yet the day feels mentally heavier than others. Research in occupational psychology and neuroscience suggests that this experience is not primarily about motivation. Experimental studies show that doing work experienced as unrewarding or aversive increases the internal cost of maintaining focus and control. This episode explores what science reveals about why work you dislike affects more than motivation, and how it quietly shapes mental fatigue, stress responses, and performance. Later in this video, we'll look at how laboratory experiments and workplace studies help explain why some tasks drain mental energy far beyond what their difficulty would suggest. The phenomenon researchers examine here is not laziness or disengagement. It is sustained effort under low reward. When people perform work they dislike, they often continue to meet external demands. The difference happens internally. Maintaining attention, accuracy, and emotional regulation becomes more costly. Researchers are interested in this because many modern jobs involve prolonged cognitive effort paired with low intrinsic reward, delayed outcomes, or limited personal control, conditions that appear repeatedly in studies of mental fatigue. For a long time, mental workload was assumed to depend mainly on task difficulty. Harder tasks were thought to be more tiring, while easier tasks were expected to be less demanding. In this earlier view, fatigue was largely explained by complexity, time on task, or insufficient breaks. More recent research has shifted toward a broader framework. Mental workload is now understood as a combination of objective demands and subjective experience. How rewarding, meaningful, or aversive a task feels changes how much internal regulation is required to sustain performance. This framework brings together cognitive load theory, stress physiology, and motivational models to explain why effort feels heavier when reward is low. Evidence for this comes from several types of studies. In laboratory experiments conducted at university research centers, participants perform working memory or response inhibition tasks for extended periods. These tasks are often repetitive, monotonous, and only modestly rewarding. Researchers measure performance accuracy, reaction time, error variability, and brain activity, particularly in prefrontal regions involved in cognitive control. Other studies use functional near-infrared spectroscopy to track changes in prefrontal oxygenation as task demands increase over time. In parallel, stress physiology studies expose participants to prolonged cognitive tasks while measuring autonomic nervous system activity, including heart rate variability and markers of sympathetic and parasympathetic balance. Occupational studies examine office workers across the workday, combining self-reported workload and fatigue with brief cognitive tests and physiological measures. Across these studies, several consistent results emerge. Tasks that are demanding but not rewarding are associated with higher subjective effort, even when objective difficulty remains stable. Over time, performance becomes more variable. Reaction times slow, error rates fluctuate, and willingness to exert effort declines. Brain measurements show increased activation in control networks early on, followed by signs of reduced efficiency as tasks continue. Additional effort yields diminishing returns. Physiological data reveal shifts towards sympathetic dominance during prolonged mental work, especially when participants feel compelled to continue despite rising fatigue. Maintaining performance under these conditions appears to amplify stress-related activation. Emotionally, mental fatigue is accompanied by mood changes, reduced drive, and greater mind-wandering. These effects emerge not because performance immediately collapses, but because sustaining control becomes increasingly costly. Importantly, occupational studies show that perceived workload predicts fatigue better than task complexity alone. When work is experienced as low reward or unwanted, the internal burden increases even if the task itself is unchanged. These findings come with important limitations. Many laboratory studies rely on simplified tasks that do not fully capture real-world work environments. Sample sizes are often modest, and physiological measures can vary widely between individuals. The research does not prove that dislike alone causes fatigue. It shows that sustained effort under low reward increases regulatory costs, which over time contribute to fatigue and instability. There is ongoing debate about how emotional factors, stress physiology, and cognitive control interact, and how individual differences shape these effects in real workplaces. The evidence does not reduce mental fatigue to a single mechanism. It points to an accumulation of cognitive and physiological strain. If disliked work quietly increases the internal cost of maintaining control, what does that suggest about why some days feel heavier, even when the workload looks the same? If you're interested in understanding what science discovers about how everyday work environments shape mental effort and fatigue, you can subscribe. This episode is part of the series Why Modern Life Feels Mentally Heavy. In the next episode, we'll explore what researchers observed about chronic mental overload.